Call of Duty Zombies was a hidden bonus mode that started back in 2008, locked behind the completion of the World at War campaign. It is a mode that has evolved past simply shooting zombies into a multiversal sci-fi adventure with bosses present in some of the more recent games that appear more like bosses from games like Destiny rather than a Call of Duty game. Zombies presents these massive bosses alongside what the mode likes to call special zombies and elite zombies. And in this video we're going to be breaking down the evolution of these special, elite and boss type zombies. This video will be broken down by game, and if I do end up missing a boss zombie, please let me know below, as there is way more boss zombies than I thought there would be. One last note before we get started is that some of the footage may not be mine, and I may use additional footage. All the footage used will be credited. Alright, let's get started with World at War, being the first game in the series, was also the most basic in terms of its features. This includes things like special zombies and boss zombies. Throughout the life cycle of World at War, we were introduced to only one new type of enemy, that being the Hellhound. The Hellhound would spawn in every 4 to 6 rounds, typically every 5 rounds on the map Shinonuma and Darius. Hellhounds are zombified dogs that are on fire. They have increased rates of speed, but they also take less damage to kill than regular zombies, and they have much less health. While the Hellhounds are indeed trivialized today, back when they first came out they were not only terrifying, they were also much more of a threat than what they are now. Players were not used to the insane speeds that Hellhounds could dish out, and this led to a lot of early downs, especially from underprepared players. The player was awarded with a max ammo for surviving a Hellhound round, providing a much needed guarantee of ammo resupply. Hellhounds are a fantastic special zombie, and it is no surprise why it was brought back so many times in the future. Black Ops 1 was the first zombies game where Treyarch really experimented with the boss zombie. They really decided to start the game off with a bang with the boss zombie on the map 5. The Pentagon Thief is the first example of a boss zombie that really shifts the gameplay that surrounds him. The Hellhounds, while tough for new players, experienced players could easily deal with them. The Pentagon Thief, due to the nature of the map he appeared on though, is tough nearly every match, unless you get incredibly lucky with getting good weapons to deal with him. The Pentagon Thief spawns into the map and beelines it for a specific player. If he manages to reach a player, he will steal their weapon, leaving them with their secondary. If the player manages to kill him before they escape, they will be awarded with a max ammo and return the gun that was taken from them. If the player can kill him before he takes their weapon, you unlock a brand new power-up, the Bonfire Sale. Similar to a fire sale, this power-up discounts an element of the map. In this case, the Pack-a-Punch is opened and discounted to 1,000 points per weapon. A fantastic reward for a well-designed risk-reward boss. What a great start for the game. Ascension introduced a new replacement to the Hellhound in the form of the Space Monkeys. Every 5 rounds, the monkeys will spawn in. They have little health and do very little damage, but they do have a unique ability. Instead of targeting you, the monkeys will target your perks. If enough damage is done, the player will lose the perk. Once the player has no perks, then the monkeys will finally target you. If you kill the monkeys without them stealing a perk, you are awarded a max ammo and a free perk. If they do steal a perk, you only get the max ammo. The first instance of a proper boss in Zombies, George Romero, is unique to nearly every other boss in Zombies history. He is an ever-present boss that slowly stalks towards you. When he gets close to you or catches a stray bullet, he will enter an enraged state. In his enraged state, he will sprint towards the player and start swinging his stage light at you. He can stun the player and deal massive amounts of damage in a short amount of time. George has upwards of 1 million health and takes an absolute shit ton of effort to kill. When he is killed, he leaves for a full round and drops a Wonderwaff drop. George can be instantly removed for the round by shooting him with the VR-11. George is a fantastic and interesting take on a boss, but is held back by the constant returning presence that he inflicts on the map. If he just left after you defeat him, I think it would suit him much better. Shangri-La gives us 2 brand new special zombies, moving away from the design of something like George or the Pentagon Thief into zombies that can be replicated and reproduced more often than either of the previous bosses, at the cost of not providing as good a reward as either of them. The Shrieker tends to be the easier of the two. It sprints towards you faster than any of the other zombies on the map. He can yell out a big scream that disorientates and blurs the player's vision, but the damage he deals is pretty much on par with a normal zombie. The napalm, on the other hand, walks incredibly slowly, but at the cost of doing massive damage with many one-shot capabilities if you are close to him. The napalm zombie explodes when killed, dealing massive damage to the player if they are in close quarters, leaving a massive pool of fire on the floor that can damage both the player and the zombies if they stand on it. The napalm zombie is fantastic, the shrieker not so much. The shrieker's fine, it's just not as good as the napalm. The astronaut boss zombie is a silent stalker around the map Moon. Without Jug, he will leave you red screen when he catches you. This boss has two very special abilities that separates him from a boss like the napalm zombie. Firstly, when he hits you, he will teleport you to a random location on the map. This can massively disorientate the player, but is mostly inconsequential, but a cool ability nonetheless. Secondly, if he manages to hit you, he will remove one of your currently purchased perks. This is where the astronaut shines as a boss. You want to avoid him, and he puts the fear into you by having this massive risk factor to being hit by him. Unfortunately, the reward does not match the risk, as the astronaut just doesn't really drop anything or provide any benefit to killing him. You just want to kill him so you don't lose a perk. I'd like to quickly mention both types of Nova 6 crawlers. These enemies are unique compared to zombies, but they're not really boss or special zombies. You get nothing for killing them. They don't have a specific guaranteed round. They're just alternate zombies, and I didn't really feel like talking about them here because I don't think they fit. Real quick, if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to leave a like and help the channel out, leaving a comment below letting me know your thoughts and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. We're aiming to hit 750 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you're at all interested in helping us reach that goal, subscribe. Also, let me know what your favorite final boss is in zombies. So I'm talking like something like Richtofen or Mephistopheles or the aliens from Spaceland. Let me know what your favorite of them is. Black Ops 2 has some repeat enemies that we're not really going to talk about. The Hellhounds, for example, return on the survival maps as a toggleable feature, but repeat enemies we're not really going to discuss unless there's any major changes with them as we go on. Transit, as the first map on the game, has a special enemy and a boss enemy, but both are lackluster as hell and give the player no incentive or reward for defeating them. The special enemies are known as the Denizens, and they hide in the fog, waiting to jump on you, and they just scrape at your face. These enemies are designed to keep you from running through the map too quickly, and that is their entire point of existence. The Avogadro is at least a cooler enemy than the Denizens, but he provides little to no reward for defeating him. The Avogadro can spawn in once the power is turned on the map. If you finish a round once the lightning is at its peak in the map, the Avogadro will spawn in. The Avogadro can zap you from afar with lightning powers that can red screen you without Jug. He differs from zombie bosses of the past as he can only take damage from melees or EMP grenades to defeat him. Galvanucles are also super useful against this boss. Die-Rise has jumping jacks, which are essentially what Nova 6 crawlers should have been. These jumping jacks move incredibly quickly, and as the name suggests, they can leap across areas to cross the gap between themselves and the players rapidly. They are weaker than a normal zombie, but that speed and agility makes them equally as deadly. The jumping jacks will reward a player with a max ammo for clearing the round. They also provide a unique reward for 100% accuracy or melee only, that being a free perk. This allows Die-Rise to be one of the easiest maps to gain full perks on, but unfortunately most of the perks here are useless. Brutus is the first zombie boss since George Romero that was designed to be this big hulking enemy that follows you around the map. Learning a lot from George's mistakes, Brutus is not always present on the map. He has less health and takes less investment to kill. This does not mean Brutus is a joke, because where he lacks in health and menace, he makes up for in damage output, speed, and additional abilities. Brutus is the first Panzer Mangler type enemy where he deals more damage than a regular zombie, has more health, and penalizes the player for keeping him alive longer and not prioritizing dealing with him. Brutus has the unique ability to lock down the map. Whenever he walks past a perk, box location, or interactable, he can lock it down, causing the player to have to pay a massive fee in the early game in order to unlock it. This is why Brutus has to be prioritized, as if he survived, he could lock down the entire map in theory. There is an achievement for doing this, so it is possible, which would cost the player a fortune to reopen everything. A very well designed zombie boss. The Witches are a very unique zombie boss on the map Buried that are confined mostly to one section of the map, and they often won't bother you unless you invade their home. The Witches are an enemy type that attack you not for your health but for your money. Each time the Witches hit you, they take 2,000 points. away from you. And when they take you down to 0 money, this is when they will hit you for your health. This is the same damage as a zombie, I believe. If the lights are on in the witch's house and you survive your trip through, you will also receive a free perk once you kill the final witch. The Templar zombies are just regular zombies that target power generators on the map instead of the player. They will ignore you and just beeline it straight to their assigned generator. They will also grant a max ammo upon defeat. The Panzer is the evolution of that Mob of the Dead Brutus concept. The Panzer is an armoured tank of a zombie that can demolish any player in its path, equipped with a grappling hook to grab players from afar and the flamethrower to toast them at close range. The Panzer has an answer to everything. The player will deal extra damage to the Panzer for hitting its weak spots and can stop it from dragging you in by shooting its glowing red hole where the grappling claw came from. The Panzer is a fantastic boss zombie that will really help usher in a new era of boss zombies. Unfortunately though, the reward for defeating him is just not there. Advanced Warfare has a crazy increase in the amount of special zombies, and the pure spam of these enemies needs to be studied. I'm going to do a really quick rapid fire through these enemies, as if I was to go in depth on each one, we would be here forever. The host zombie spreads the lethal zombie infection through its hits. You must go to each map's disinfecting zone before the timer runs out in order to cleanse yourself. The EMZ zombies are the worst zombies in this mode. Watch out for using your exo near these bad boys, as each time you do, your exo will be disabled and your screen will be blocked with shit. The chargers are glowing red enemies that also use their exosuit more often, run faster, and tend to target the player more aggressively. The oozers are a rarity for this game, as they only appear on a single map. The oozer spawns in acid that will rapidly damage the player as they stand in it. The meatbag is a zombie that wears armor, a standard zombie that takes slightly more damage to kill and can spawn in incredibly early. The dogs are basically just hellhounds, but they have EMZ variants and teleport variants as well, which is kind of cool. Having the variants of the main zombies also transfer down to the dogs is an interesting idea. The exploders are zombies that glow green and appear to be on fire. Upon death or within getting too close to this zombie, it will explode, dealing large damage to the player and nearby zombies. The blinkers zombies are teleporting zombies that teleport from area to area of the map, rapidly closing distance between themselves and the player. The spiker zombies have spikes embedded in their body, and when you shoot them, they will explode outwards, damaging the player. The fuse zombie is a very unique zombie in terms of this game. This is where two zombies of two special zombies types fuse together. For example, you can have a blinker and an EMZ combining to get a teleporting EMZ, which is just a criminal idea, but it's actually a really cool idea as well. It's just unfortunate that they only appeared in the last map, I believe, and they also just the entire game was kind of spammed full of these special enemies already. Okay, so that was it for special enemies. Now looking at it right now, I would say that this is so impressive that they were able to make so many unique enemies for each map. Modern Zombies is shaking in its boots right now. Unfortunately, the issue with all of these special zombies is the fact that they are not limited to special rounds, and there is a massive oversaturation of special enemies in this game. There was only 4 maps in this game, and you ended up getting upwards of 14 to 15 special enemies, which is an overwhelming amount for 4 maps. Okay, so keen-eyed viewers may have noticed that I missed 2 enemies from Advanced Warfare's life cycle. These 2 enemies are closer to bosses, and they deserve their own separate mentions. The Goliath, for those of you who may know and may have been watching the review series for a while, I did not like the Goliath the first time I tackled Infection. It brings me a lot of pain to admit this, but I was actually wrong with my assessment of the Goliath. The Goliath is a beast of a boss, a giant armored zombie that has this massive baton, EMP launchers, and a giant riot shield. It's a tough boss. The boss does not reward you. But honestly, I can't blame the boss for this. The issue lies within the game itself, because the boss itself is super well designed and a really enjoyable and tough fight. It's a very well designed boss. It's a fun boss to fight. And I think it's actually a really good evolution on the Panzer concept. The issue here is that the game does not reward you for fighting this boss, and this is why I think it's done better on Carrier, where this boss is spawned in to punish the player for not doing something correctly, whereas on Infection it just spawns in throughout the rounds. Also, it gets a really cool reskin in Carrier, and also it can teleport in Carrier. So yeah, the boss also evolves as they go on. The Goliath's a fantastic boss. I was completely wrong, and it's the game's fault that the Goliath sucks, not the boss's design. Oz is the final boss of Advanced Warfare, and he often, honestly, is very underrated. This is the first official real boss fight in Call of Duty Zombies, and it comes from Advanced Warfare, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. This boss includes mechanics simple as they are, a health bar, and multiple different phases for the player to navigate. Without this boss fight paving the way forward into the next generation of Zombies games, we may not have gotten some of the absolutely fantastic bosses we did in the future. Now, is this boss perfect? No. Should it be mandatory? No, it should not be. Is the boss fun though? Yes, I think it is. An absolute banger way to end the DLC season, and a great way to usher in Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3 is a game I would guess many of the people watching are big fans of, a game that sent zombies into the mainstream, and a game that would shake up the zombies formula forever after its launch. Black Ops 3 came out with a bang with two launch maps, The Giant and Shadows of Evil. The Giant I often forget about actually. Hellhounds return on The Giant and on the Horizon track, but honestly not much has changed for this enemy type, and definitely not in a good way at this stage. They're kind of dragging it out now with the Hellhounds. Shadows of Evil, on the other hand, launched with some fantastic new enemies and an amazing art direction. The big hitter of these brand new enemies is the Margwa. The Margwa is a three-headed tentacle alien monster that barrels towards the player in order to slam attack it with its tentacles. This attack can be an instant down on direct hit without Jug, and an easy red screen with Jug. In order to damage the Margwa, you must wait for its mouth to open and shoot the glowing yellow mouth spot. The head will then explode, letting out a couple of the new aerial type, the Parasites. These may be familiar to any of you that have played Black Ops 6 Zombies. The Parasites are identical here, as they zip around very quickly with their small hitboxes spitting at you from afar. They act as the max ammo round in this map, and when paired with the other special zombie in this map, they have both air and ground covered. The Meatballs. I actually know there's an official name for them, but I don't know what it is. Similarly to the Parasites, these enemies simply roll around, targeting the player and exploding when they get within range of the player. This is probably the most absurd enemy we will see for quite a while here in Zombies. The Keepers are enemies that are just ghoulish reskins of zombies, dealing roughly the same amount of damage. They're mainly an aesthetic change. These enemies flow across the floor, gliding towards the players, and are mostly used during the map's rituals, but they are a really cool aesthetic change. If you're gonna do reskins, do them like the Keepers. I debated about whether or not to even include the Shadow Man, as it's so lackluster. Comparing this boss to the ending of Advanced Warfare shows how much of a joke it is. The boss in Advanced Warfare had damage phases, mechanics, and a sense of danger. The Shadow Man just merely stands there looking at us while we shoot him. Once he hovers above the altar, you simply interact and he just drops dead, or is well defeated anyway. This boss is an absolute stinker and such a disappointment compared to what came before. The Horizon track, as I stated in my review, is the master of reissued concepts, and as such both of its special enemies are reissued. We have the Hellhounds again, back as I said, nearly identical to the World at War Hellhounds, and then we have the Panzer. The Panzer in this map is also different from the one present on the Origins map. We've traded out the grapple hook for an electric shock launcher that shoots electro bolts at the player, which stuns, slows, and disorientates the player. This Panzer is also slightly easier to deal with and inspires much less fear than the original. The Horizon track also has an improved boss fight experience on the previous maps. Not only is this map the most climactic, not only is the boss the most climactic part of this map, it also aesthetically improves on every aspect of the previous boss fights. We have a giant Keeper that has mechanics, different attacks, and multiple different phases. The Keeper can launch projectiles towards you, cause the ground to erupt beneath you, and has a devastating wipe attack. The boss fight typically takes place over 3 to 4 phases, in which the player must stun the boss using the map's specialist weapon and then shoot the glowing weak spot in its chest. The boss fight also includes skeletons instead of zombies, but this is mostly just a reskin. Zetsubo introduces brand new enemies into the fold that fit with the map thematically and aesthetically. Starting off, we have the spiders. These enemies act as this map's version of the dogs. The spiders have little health but make up for it through their movement, ranged and close range combat capabilities, and the ability to block off certain sections of the map using their webs, a fantastic new enemy type. The Trasher is this map's panzer type enemy that has 3 glowing spores on its body. Shooting these spores causes them to explode, killing the Trasher. The Trasher will then drop a cloud of spores that can cause zombies infected by them to turn into a new Trasher. There are also spores around the map that can do the same thing. The Trasher can also slam down into a player, causing an instant down if not a pure red screen. The Mama Spider is the first example of a mid-map boss fight. Once the player has the Wonder Weapon, they can break the webs, blocking the cave and allow themselves into the spider's cavern. The Mama Spider will shoot venom directly at you, smash at you with its giant legs, and summon multiple little spiders to also help dealing with you. It's a fantastic addition, and I wish they'd done more mid-round boss fights like this in the future. Takio is the final boss of this map as a Super Trasher. The Super Trasher is mainly there as set dressing though, as unlike the Giant Keeper, this boss does very little to attack the player. He occasionally slams down, but that's about it. The boss fight is really just consists of dealing with regular Trashers and shooting the giant weak spot on the Super Trasher whenever it's available. Garod Krovi has a similar number of new enemies, and they are as equally high a quality as Zetsubo. We have the introduction of the new enemy that we are all way too familiar with at this stage, the Mangler. The Mangler is the Russians' answer to everyone's favorite, the Panzer. The Mangler has a projectile cannon that shoots pure energy blasts at the player. The Mangler also has a serious fist on him, absolutely pummeling the player if they get within close range, similar to the Panzer. The Mangler also has some armor, but this is easily shot off by most guns on the map. Like, if you watched my recent live stream attempt of beating the Garod Krovi Easter egg, you see how easy it is to kill a Panzer. A Mangler. They're not that difficult. The Valkyries are this map's version of the Hellhound, although for the first time, a Hellhound type enemy that seems to have a fairly decent amount of health. The Valkyries are drone type enemies that have the ability to shoot electro beams out of their tentacles. I think tentacles is the right word. I don't know. Appendages. Is that better? I don't know. Honestly, a really cool reskin of a Hellhound type enemy, and it takes that kind of gameplay aspect and it kind of flips it on its head a little bit. They're a tougher fight. There's more to them than a Hellhound and most other Hellhound reskin enemies as well. This map has a very unique 2-phase boss fight, where the first phase you are teamed up with Nikolai and his mech to defeat a dragon. The dragon has mainly ranged attacks that will also act as area denial, as it can spit fire on the entire arena, requiring you to take out your shield. Nikolai will shoot the dragon with his mech's weapon, and it will open up a weak spot for the player to shoot, and then you just do that a couple of times, rinse and repeat, and the dragon will be killed. The mech is then phase 2 of this boss fight, and the player must avoid Nikolai and his mech's devastating attacks. There's also score streaks, dragons, manglers, they're all here to help him out as well. The mech will have glowing weak spots that must be shot in order to destroy it. Garod's main boss is a massive upgrade and a step forward in terms of final bosses, and most maps should at least match this map's quality in terms of final boss fight, even though I fucking hate that Easter egg. Revelations uses a lot of the previous map's enemies as part of its theming of combining all of the old maps and worlds together. This map comes with an additional form of Margwas. These elemental Margwas mainly act as aesthetic changes with some minor new abilities. These colours are fantastic though, and it's basically an improvement on the phenomenal enemy design on Shadows, especially the purple Margwa. The purple Margwa looks cool as fuck. The main new enemies on this map are the Furies, and these enemies are essentially crawling versions of the Keepers. There's no real unique abilities with these guys aside from them being a new enemy type to shoot at. They don't really do anything new. Black Ops 3 was a fantastic improvement of the special enemy format. It took the lessons from both Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 2 and combined them together to create a game that allowed for each map, besides Revelations and maybe the Giant, to have its own unique enemy ecosystem in which they fit both thematically and aesthetically. Sure, each map is a bit samey by adding one new elite and one new special zombie, but I would take that over the current reuse issue that we have in Black Ops 6. Infinite Warfare continues along with what Black Ops 3 started in having unique enemies suited to each individual map. I'd say this game takes it even further, with each map having the most thematically relevant batch of enemies in the history of zombies. Spaceland introduces the Clowns as the map's low health enemy that provides you with a max ammo every 5 rounds. These enemies will rush you in a group, and when they reach you they will explode, with the potential to cause massive damage, but they're not really much of a challenge. The big enemy here is the Brute, which is a giant alien mascot of the park. He has the ability to shoot you with the beam of energy from the gem in his helmet. When the helmet is knocked off by the player, when they deal enough damage, the Brute will be incredibly vulnerable to headshots and will deal melee damage to the player as he can no longer shoot the laser. A really well designed and somewhat challenging boss if you are not prepared, but he is a rather easy enemy to defeat. Where Infinite Warfare really succeeds is with each map's final boss, and this is nowhere more apparent than the alien boss fight. Upon completion of the Easter egg, the alien will come down from his ship and start to shoot you with his alien blaster. This alien blaster can do an insane amount of damage to the player. The alien will also teleport around the arena, rapidly getting himself into different positions. The player must deal with the alien by shooting it with the map's main wonder weapon, alien pistols. The player must do this 3 times, each time meleeing the alien when it is taken down. A fantastic start for Infinite Warfare. Raven the Redwoods is not only the coolest map from a visual perspective, but also in the new enemy design department. We have this map's version of the Hellhound in like the Bigfoot type enemy. These enemies have more health than the typical max ammo enemy, and they deal a significant amount of damage to you if you're not prepared. They are much tougher than most normal Hellhound enemies. This map also has the Slasher, which is an invincible enemy that appears throughout the map's main Easter egg whenever you go into rave mode. The Slasher has a chainsaw that can red screen you even with Jug. The Slasher slowly stalks towards you until he gets within a certain distance of you, then he will charge at you with a chainsaw in hand. The only way to kill the Slasher is to use his own chainsaw against him, which can be only gotten once you complete the map's main Easter egg. The Super Slasher is this map's final boss in what is probably the most mechanically demanding fight so far. Unfortunately, the actual boss here does little to actually damage the player. Mainly, the fight actually is just zombies and mechanics. The boss has a very little presence in the actual fight. He has a wipe attack, he shoots out chainsaws and can leap, but these attacks are so obviously telegraphed and easy to avoid that there's little to no chance of it killing you. Shaolin adds in a new reskin of the clowns in the form of the roller skating zombies. These are the same as the clowns in every way, nothing more than a reskin. Thematically nice though. Shaolin also adds in the ninja zombies, which are insane. These are some of the strongest special enemies that have ever been added. They have the ability to teleport in front of you when you sprint. They can deal massive amounts of damage in seconds, and overall are some of the worst designed special enemies ever introduced into the zombies game mode. Who thought this was a good idea? Honestly. Shaolin's final boss is the Rat King, who is a cool looking final boss, but unfortunately some of the challenges, especially the one where you have to stand in the goo and kill the zombies, this literally made me actually feel like I was going insane when I done it for the first time. The other 2 challenges present are actually like fine, but the goo one really ruins that boss fight for me. The actual Rat King is cool and the fight is interesting. He's quite easy to deal with himself. Like whenever you're damaging him, he isn't the problem, it is the challenges. Attack of the Radioactive Thing continues the same formula of having a new max ammo enemy, a tougher mini boss enemy, and finally a boss zombie for completing the Easter egg. To start us off, we have the Krogs, which are mutated frog-like enemies that can leap and bound towards the player. These enemies do similar damage to a regular zombie and move slightly slower than the other special enemy on this map. They can do more damage if they hit you with that lunge attack though. That lunge attack is very dangerous. We then have the larger purple Krogs. I don't know if they have a separate name or not. These enemies are just faster and stronger versions of the Krogs. They have a charge attack that can also just red screen the character if it connects. Defeating this enemy typically drops a power up. Nearly every time it has dropped me a double points. I'm not sure if it's a guaranteed double points, but nearly every time it has dropped me a double points. I can't actually remember a time where it didn't drop me a double points. The final boss of this map is Krogzilla. Krogzilla is a massive version of the Krogs on this map, and unlike the other boss in this game mode, the majority of this boss fight is mechanics and phases. Very little of this boss is actually shooting him with your weapon. Even looking back at something like the Super Slasher, you still have to shoot the boss in order to damage him. This boss, on the other hand, takes place over 4 stages. Stage 1 is an escort where you escort the bomb up the beach towards Krogzilla. Next, you must shoot him 3 times with laser cannons that are spread out around the map. Stage 3 has you defending the beach from Krogs and zombies as Krogzilla shoots out acid onto the ground, shrinking your play space as you play. And finally, you must dodge laser beams while doing parkour under a time limit to get to the bomb, and finally input your code in order to kill Krogzilla. As I said, very little of it is actually about damaging the boss. Beast from Beyond is basically an Extinction sequel, and as such, a lot of the special enemies are the cryptid. We have a whole bunch of different cryptids, but as far as I can tell, they all basically do the same thing, just with updated damage and health. We have the Scouts, which are by far the weakest variants, the Phantoms, which are larger blue variants of the Scout, the Rhino, which is the massive brute enemy that deals big damage but is manageable, and then we have the map's final boss, which is the blue Rhino. This thing is an insane amount of health. Like, I mean, without cards or bugs, you have to use the Sentinel and be shooting at this thing for like 10 minutes and it would still be like fine. It would be fine. To make matters worse, this thing drops fire on the floor when you damage it, and it can red screen you in one hit. The blue Rhino actually took me hours to defeat the first time. Like, it is just a very poorly designed boss. We also have Mephistopheles, which is the final and most advanced boss in all of Call of Duty Zombies history. This boss was designed to be tough and to take everything you have learned from Infinite Warfare and execute on the mechanics at play here perfectly. I have only recently unlocked Director's Cut and have yet to play this fight, but I do plan on doing it at a later date. I just know from looking at it, I thought this is one of the most impressive bosses in the game's history. Infinite Warfare was a phenomenal game when it comes to bosses and special enemies, and for the most part, it followed a very maintainable formula in which each map had a similar amount of enemies and designs added to it gameplay wise. Each enemy really excelled in its given map, and this game had the best final bosses in the MOD's history for what feels like the longest time. I want to preface this section of the video by saying I may make some mistakes here, as I have just recently started playing World War II Zombies somewhat consistently, so I may not know every boss and may get some things wrong. First type of special zombies you will run into in World War II are the Pest, which is the game's answer to the Hellhound or max ammo type zombie. These zombies will run at you very quickly, do less damage, and have very little health. Kill the round, get a max ammo, same, rinse, repeat, same as usual. The next enemy you'll run into is the Bomber. This enemy is a regular zombie that carries a bomb on its back. If you ever get too close, the zombie will absolutely destroy your health, putting you right down into your shield territory. You can also preemptively shoot the bomb off the zombie's back, killing it and other zombies nearby. Slow and menacing at first, the Wussling is this game's version of the Mangler. The Wussling has a decent amount of health, but the challenge with this enemy comes into play when it charges at you. The Wussling deals incredibly high damage. You must be close to it for the damage to apply. A really well designed enemy. The Brenner is this game's equivalent of the Panzer, with more health than the Wussling and carrying a flamethrower as its primary weapon. This enemy has a massive health and deals what could be considered devastating tick damage. The Brenner has flamethrower tanks on its back that can be destroyed to deal massive damage to the boss. The Panzer Mortar is the first final boss in World War II Zombies, and it does not disappoint. This continues the trend that was started in Infinite Warfare of having fantastic final bosses. The Panzer Mortar is one of the coolest looking bosses of all time, reminding me of an enemy from a game like Dead Space more than COD Zombies. The boss fight itself is a simple 3 to 4 phase boss fight in which players must use batteries that can be knocked off the blimp in order to deal damage to the boss. The Meuchlers are introduced on the game's second map and are some of the worst enemies that have ever been introduced in COD Zombies. The Meuchlers, I think I'm saying that right, are fast, hit hard, stealthy, and have more health than they have any right having. These enemies are just not balanced, but look, at least there's not a worse version of this enemy on the same map, right? And then we have the Master Meuchlers, a even worse form of the Meuchler, acting as the boss on the Darkest Shore and being what I would consider the hardest boss fight in the entire mode's history. These enemies have more health to deal more damage and come with ranged attacks, making these enemies even more insufferable than just the normal Meuchlers. Hopefully I never have to say Meuchler again. The Sizzlers are the special zombies on the map The Shadow Throne, and these enemies are completely unavoidable. In order to progress the most basic parts of the map, you will inadvertently summon the blimp that can spawn in the Sizzler. The Sizzler are just faster versions of normal zombies. They deal the same amount of damage, but they can explode all nearby zombies and damage the player when they get close. The final boss of the Shattertron is none other than the Stadjäger. The Stadjäger has ranged attacks, the ability to create sizzlers, electric burst attacks, and a massive potential for melee damage. The Stadjäger can also do a charge attack similar to that of the Whistling. I have great memories of this boss fight, but I have not beat it since my first ever completion back in like 2017. When did this game come out? Like back when I first completed it on Xbox with Jack. The next batch of maps were the Tortured Path, and I did not play these. There was an upgraded Brenner called the Racken Brenner as the final boss in the first Tortured Path map, and the final boss of the final map was called the Guardian. This was a more unique of the two bosses, but I still have no first-hand experience with either boss, so I don't feel comfortable commenting on them. The final map introduced the Corpse Eater to the game, which is a very unique zombies that gained power and became harder to kill by simply eating and killing other zombies. Do not get this wrong though, this zombie is not your friend, as the more powerful and more zombies he consumed, he got pretty difficult to kill, apparently. I don't know, I don't have the most experience with, what's this even called? The Final Shore? The Final Reich? I don't know. Whatever this map's called. What is this map called? The Final Darkest Shore? The Final Snow? What? I feel like I'm going insane. Anyway, the name of the map's not important. I've played it, and these guys, they can be tough, apparently. I don't know, I just got that information off the wiki, to be honest, for this last map. Finally, we have the God King, the final boss of the World War II zombie story. This boss consists of 4 different phases with unique attacks and mechanics per phase. We have ranged attacks, dealing massive amounts of health, and a requirement for the map's wonder weapons. During the boss fight, there will be many Corpse Eaters. These can be paired together to make a really tough boss fight if it's not cheesed, which I'm pretty sure the typical way of dealing with this boss is doing the cheese. I don't know for sure. Again, I haven't done it. I do plan on doing it, but World War II is my area of lacking in the expertise department. World War II did, of course, start off with a bang, though, but unfortunately, as the maps degraded in quality, unfortunately, the enemy quality seemed to degrade too. We have the Moitlers, I had to say it again, and they are pieces of shit. The woeful boss fights, I don't actually know what I'm talking about for the woeful boss fights. I don't know why I wrote that down. I actually had, I think I'm just talking about the Moitlers here, because the Stadjäger and the Panzermotor are great fights. I've heard good things about the God King if you cheese him, and I've heard good things about him if you don't cheese him. So I've heard good things about both of them. So I actually don't know what I mean by the woeful boss fights. But I do want to say that it was a bit of a disaster for the enemies that were added post-Final Reich. The post-Final Reich is Frozen Dawn or something like that. I think it's Frozen Dawn. I just remembered the name of the map there. Anyway, yeah, it's unfortunate to say that this is a massive step back from Infinite Warfare, but there was potential here. And yeah, if you're still watching, why don't you tell me what your favorite boss or special enemy in all of Zombies is? I'm just curious, and I want to see how many people have made it this far into the video. This is by far my longest scripted video I have ever made, and if you're still watching and enjoying, subscribe to the channel to help me out, and don't forget to leave a like to show you enjoyed. Black Ops 4 is a game, nah, just kidding. Black Ops 4 introduces, especially in the first couple of maps, what was the joke there? Well, I think I might have been going insane while writing that, actually. I'm not gonna cut it, but like, was the joke that the game had gone through turbulence? I don't know what the joke was there. Obviously I thought it was funny at the time, but I think I might have been going insane while writing this script. Black Ops 4 introduces, especially in the first couple of maps, some really cool new enemies. We have offensive defenses and a mix of both in terms of what these zombies can do. Unfortunately, as we reach the last 2 maps, we get a lot of enemy remixes, which is just not great. But starting off, let's talk about the 4 Catalyst zombies. These little characters have a lot of different abilities that can be used to attack the player directly or buff the zombies. Starting off, we have the first Catalyst, the Fire Catalyst. This zombie is basically just a napalm zombie from Shangri-La. Next up, we have the Water Catalyst. These zombies actively try to stay out of your way, as they are designed to buff all the zombies in the map aside from themselves. Zombies with the blue aura around them deal increased damage and have higher resilience. The poison catalysts tend to not attack the player directly with hits or direct damage. Instead, they will try to get close enough to get you with the presence of their tick damage. Finally, we have the lightning catalyst, and this zombie is basically just an updated and reskinned version of the Shrieker from Shangri-La. We have two different versions of gladiator enemy types, starting with the destroyers. These are the ranged version of the gladiator, wearing armor that will give it damage resistance until destroyed, and they're wielding massive battle axes that they will throw at the player, causing rapid damage. We also have the Marauders. This is a more close range type of the two gladiators. This enemy uses its better movement with his leap ability to close the gap between itself and the player. These enemies deal roughly the same amount of damage but are much harder to avoid. They make up for it by having less overall health and much less armor though. Next up we have the Zombies Tigers, which are basically this map's version of the Hellhounds, but unlike most of their Hellhound reskins, they do actually do more damage, have more health, and they have a devastating leap attack that can deal drastically increased damage compared to the normal Tiger Swipe. Finally, we have the big boy. We have the Blightfather. This absolute hulking monstrosity is a pure and absolute unit. This enemy has similar abilities to that of Brutus, in which it can puke on interactables, essentially locking them down. The Blightfather has a toxic spew attack that can deal damage to the player, a tongue attack that acts as a grapple to bring the player in, and a devastating melee attack. This is an absolute unit of an elite zombie, and it should have been brought back in Black Ops 6 for sure. They should have brought back one of the cool things about Chaos. The first final boss we're going to talk about is the zombified elephants found on 9. While the boss is an impressive spectacle and was a fantastic introduction to bosses in Black Ops 4, it unfortunately is missing any of the mechanical complexity that can be found in the previous maps and games. The elephants act as a nice set dressing, yes, but unfortunately there's absolutely no mechanics at play here. All the player has to do is shoot the elephant's armor until its weak spot is unveiled, and then they're just melted in seconds from there. Can the elephants or riders hurt you? Yeah, they absolutely can. Will it happen to anyone who's remotely prepared? No, I really shouldn't. Next up we have the Stoker, and the Stoker is a unit of a man that is wielding a shovel as its weapon. This enemy is aesthetically one of the coolest looking enemies in the history of the game. The Flaming Man roams the map with the use of their shovel as a melee weapon and tearing pieces of themselves off to use as a fireball range attack. This zombie also has a unique weak spot, which is nicer than just having to shoot it in its head every time. Next we have the Eye in the Sky. Voyage of Despair's boss fight has you attack the giant floating eye in what a lot of people would consider one of the better boss fights in COD Zombies. The Eye has a multitude of phases and attacks that can be difficult to deal with if the player is missing the map's wonder weapon. Sorry, the game's wonder weapon, the Helion Salvo. The boss introduces a wipe attack in its later phases, but it is well telegraphed and avoidable. On the first DLC map, we have the Nosferatu, which is a vampire enemy type that have the staggering ability to just disable your health regeneration. Like, what is that? Why can this happen? Anyway, I do not like this as an enemy ability, but the enemy itself isn't awful. The Nosferatu is just a really fast zombie that can deliver rapid blows. My main issue is actually with the next enemy. The Crimson Nosferatus are pieces of shit. Not only does this enemy get the same abilities as the original Nosferatu, but they get a new fuck-ass ability where they are able to also stun the player. These enemies already deal increased damage and move faster than the original Nosferatu, but if you get hit by this stunning attack, you get hit with devastating damage and lose the ability to move. Fuck the Crimson Nosferatus for real. The Werewolf is this map's heavy enemy. They have a close range swipe attack with their claws that deal 75 damage to the player per swing. They also have a pounce attack which, while weaker, can put you in a closer range to the wolf, allowing him to get more of them close range swipe attacks off. This enemy also has high speed, which allows it to close the gap between the player incredibly quickly. The Shadow Werewolf is the final boss of Dead of the Night. This wolf differs from the main wolf on the map through aesthetic design and its ability to become invisible. The player can only tell where the wolf is by looking for the trail that it leaves behind it as it moves. Besides the invisibility and the capture mechanics needed in order to damage the wolf, it is identical to the base wolf in its attacks. Overall, a more engaging mechanical boss than the elephants, but it lacks the same spectacle to it. Next up we have DLC 2, which is Ancient Evil, which reuses the Catalyst zombies and introduces a brand new heavy zombie. This is a gigantic warrior zombie that has 4 arms. I just could not pronounce the name of this enemy. Sorry. You know who I'm talking about, the gladiator, the big giant champion. Each arm holds a different item used to mess with the player. One holds a spear, well actually two hold the spear, which he can throw at the player from range. Another holds a shield that can block his weak spot, and the shield can also create a blinding stun beam that stops the player from attacking. Finally, we have the sword, which is used for them close range attacks. Mechanically and aesthetically, this is one of my favourite heavy zombies in Black Ops 4 for all of its unique attacks and how fun he is to fight. He also reminds me a lot of the Goliath. Fun fact, yeah. So fighting this guy is kind of what made me change my mind about the Goliath. The final boss of this map is when you have to fight both Perseus and Pegasus. First phase has you fight Pegasus as he flies around the map. Pegasus is only damageable with the specialist when you have him knocked out of the sky. Perseus can only be attacked to kill once you have defeated Pegasus. You must bring him to his knees to make him vulnerable to attack. This is probably the coolest boss fight in design out from the outside, but I am still yet to do this boss, so I cannot really comment on the gameplay. Finally, we have the Aether enemies. Blood of the Dead has the Brutus return. Not much has changed, as I may have mentioned before. We fight a Mega Brutus at the end of Blood's Easter egg. This does not really change the main Brutus enemy, and is essentially just a bigger Brutus, so nothing really changes here. Alpha Omega adds 3 new enemies, which are just reskins of old enemies with new abilities. Firstly, we have the Lightning Hounds. These enemies function identical to the normal Hellhounds, but have electricity instead of fire. Next up, we have the Jolting Jack, which is essentially just an over 6 crawler, but imbued with electricity. These enemies have the ability to shoot lightning bolts at the player from a distance. These are mainly ranged enemies, but can also get closer to the player and swipe at them. And the Nova 6 bombers are the final new special enemy in Black Ops 4 Zombies, and these enemies are basically an Aether reskin of the Water Catalyst and simply exist to buff other zombies. The special enemies added here are just shockingly bad and give the player a really bad taste. Why does the Aether get reskins yet Chaos gets these fantastic aesthetic new zombie bosses? Well, that's a story for another day, but Alpha Omega's special zombies are a real letdown. What about the map's final boss? And the final boss of the entire Aether storyline was a reskin of the Avogadro. Having the same base attacks as the original and no direct way to kill him, the player must force him back into the pyramid in order to lock him away and get the elemental shard. Black Ops 4 is such an interesting case where the first half is packed with cool, unique enemies and fantastic bosses, and then you get to the second half, or the Aether half, and it's just shockingly bad. We have no new unique enemies, and bosses that are present on the Aether maps are such a massive letdown in comparison to the Chaos ones. It is really a tragedy, as this game had such high potential. If they just kept the pace as they had to start, it could have been the best game in terms of new enemies, but unfortunately as it is now, it's a massive letdown for Aether fans and a massive win for Chaos fans. It really is the biggest definition of a mixed bag. Black Ops Cold War came back with a vengeance, with each map having at least one new unique enemy and interesting fun bosses. It seems Treyarch really wanted to right their wrongs that were made during the life cycle of Black Ops 4, particularly with the Aether crowd. We start off with Die Machine, which introduces 2 new enemies to the fold, with the Plague Hounds and the Megaton. The Plague Hounds are, of course, a mix of the classic Hellhound formula, but done correctly. Unlike the Electro Hounds from Alpha Omega, these hounds sport a brand new model and new poison-ass cloud ability. I think I meant poison gas cloud ability, which damages the player when they step into it. We have an enemy which impacts the player in a greater way than any of the other Hellhound variants. The Megaton is one of my favourite enemies that has ever had to be faced and created in the Zombies mode. The Megaton is a massive hulking threat that can immediately throw a player off their game if they are unprepared. The Megaton has 2 different types of ranged attacks. We have the direct radioactive blast, which deals a single hit of major damage to the player and then drops a pool of radioactive debris that ignores your armor and deals tick damage to your health as you stand in it. The second attack is a trio of blast of radioactive goop. These deal less damage but are faster. Finally, the Megaton also has a melee attack that deals devastating damage if he is close enough to the player, especially if they have no armor. At least you can kill him and not worry about it, right? No. When you kill him, he splits into 2 different enemies, the Megaton Bomber and the Megaton Blaster. These have the same strength with the melee attack, but they only have access to one of the Megaton's range attack each. So it's just a really cool enemy. The The Megaton is just an awesome enemy. It's a really cool enemy. I really like the Megaton. Next up on DLC 2, we have the return of the regular Hellhounds, but now they have a napalm effect, leaving fire that gives the player tick damage if they stand in it for too long. That is the big difference. Then we got the Mimics, which could disguise themselves as floor loot, and when the player approached, they would emerge. These enemies have a close range swipe attack and then a grapple attack that can drag the player back into them, dealing a devastating bite attack. A great new enemy type with a fun gimmick, but unfortunately you can often tell if something on the ground is a mimic or not, which is done much better in Black Ops 6. The Manglers also returned in this map, very similar to their original counterpart. We have a ranged and close range attack, and these enemies are basically identical to how they were on COD. The Order is the final enemy on this map and has a special assault wave alongside its appearance as the map's final boss. The Order is very similar to the boss at the end of the final Reich in terms of appearance, the Panzer Mortar. This giant boss has a multitude of attacks, including a devastating slam attack that has one-shot potential, a flame-like attack that spawns in a swarm of hellhounds, and a blast attack that throws out micro enemies to deal take damage. This boss is a bit of a letdown in terms of the map's final boss, but as a special round boss and on Outbreak, this enemy shines and works so much better than the stationary final boss Orda. The Legion is the final boss of the first Outbreak main quest and is what a lot of people would consider the best boss in Black Ops Cold War. The Legion is one of, if not the first bosses to include a timer element to add some external pressure onto the player. The Legion takes the appearance of a gigantic Tempest that has an armored spot on its chest that the player must destroy. Once the armored spot is destroyed, 3 orbs come out of the Legion that the player must destroy. Rinse and repeat until all the orbs are destroyed in order to destroy the Legion. The Legion uses range attacks primarily to deal with the player, stunning and causing large bursts of damage, making him a challenge, but the main challenge in this boss fight comes from the special enemy spam in the arena. The Kranzi Soldat is essentially the Panzer from Origins, but reimagined, carrying the same signature flamethrower. This enemy is absolutely devastating up close, dealing rapid tick damage. The main difference are the Kranzi's appearance and how the armor works in the game. The Kranzi's weak spot is blocked by the new armor, meaning the player has to break it first before dealing the critical damage. This destruction aspect is one of the coolest aspects of the Cold War armor system. Tormentors act as the map Marauder Totems version of the Hellhounds. These enemies are incredibly weak but will sprint towards you at high speed. Once they are in your range, they will explode right next to you, dealing massive amounts of damage without armor. These are basically red Tempests that explode. Next up we have the Tempests, which were introduced I believe on Outbreak, but this is the first round-based map on which they appear. I'm talking about Mauer here, obviously. Tempests can shut down vehicles, shock the player with range attacks, and teleport away from danger. But honestly, they don't really have that much health enough to be a threat, and they're not really useful outside of Outbreak. Disciples are the new special enemy introduced on Mauer, and these enemies act more as a support unit than an offensive one. They buff nearby enemies, siphon your health directly, and tend to try avoid contacting the player. These enemies have the unique hooded robe design and are introduced into this amazingly stunning ritual. Like, the first time you run into them, they're in this ritual and it's really cool looking. Unfortunately for the Disciple, it is massively improved upon in the Black Ops 6 iteration. This is still a great proof of concept though. Mauer ends off with a fight against Valentina as the map's final boss. With a similar look to the Tormentors found on the map, Valentina supports a variety of attacks and abilities that she will fling at you from her crystal throne. Valentina has a shard-like attack that shoots volleys of razor-sharp crystal shards at the player, a blue wipe attack that will instantly down a player if they don't break line of sight with her, and finally a healing ability in which she can siphon the life from one zombie in order to restore her own health. The fight takes place in 5 phases in which the player must attack and break her shield before she can be attacked directly. An absolutely fantastic boss fight, and it's definitely my pick over Legion, but I could see it going either way. Finally, we have the last map on Black Ops Cold War, which introduces 2 new enemies, including the map's new elite enemy and the final boss of the game, the Forsaken. Looking at the new elite, the Abomination, basically just a Margwa dog hybrid that has a charge ability which it can use to gain massive ground on the player. If connecting, also disorientates the player. The Abomination can also open its mouth to reveal 3 arc beaming mouths that shoot a beam of energy at the player that can rapidly destroy the player's shields. The Abomination also has a bite attack which deals massive one-time damage to the player. Unlike the Margwa, the Abomination can be damaged while its mouth is closed, but it deals heavily minimized damage. One of the better designed enemies released in years. Finally, we have the Forsaken, which is the final boss of the game. This boss has a multitude of attacks which are based on the wand powers, I believe they're called, which is like the specialist of the game, like Aether Shroud and stuff. He has an attack for nearly all of these different specialists that have different effects on the player. Obviously, for example, the Cryo Freeze attack that he has slows the player down. The boss is immune to normal weapon damage outside of breaking his shield, and he must be attacked by the special Aether Cannons found in the boss arena. As the phases go on, the Forsaken, as I mentioned, introduces new attacks, including these balls that deal arc damage, and eventually the arena becomes an absolute hellhole, just full of so much different stuff that's trying to kill you. Keep shooting until you're auto-downed by the Forsaken, and this is how you just defeat the boss. He just gets defeated in a cutscene. Cold War, looking back on it, had surprisingly impressive with its bosses and enemy selection. We have some fantastic final bosses like Legion and Valentina. We have some great updates on old enemies like the new Plague Hounds or the rework on the Abomination. And we have some great new special enemies that change how the game is played and always keeps you on your toes, like the Disciple and the Mimic. Looking forward to Black Ops 6, it negatively impacts my opinion on this game's special enemies, as a lot of them were reused in Black Ops 6. But honestly, this game is banging when it comes to special enemies. Die Machine and Firebase are lacking on final bosses, but after these maps, the boss quality ramps up massively. Call of Duty Peak Guard has some of the strangest boss type enemies ever introduced to the Zombies game mode, and I don't really mean this in a bad way. All of the new enemies, apart from maybe the Boom Schreier, look absolutely awesome from an aesthetic point of view at the very least. They look scary and awesome at the same time, with a few standouts. At the same time, throughout the course of this incredibly short entry into the Zombies mode, we only really received 5 special enemies, with only one totally unique endgame boss. That boss, of course, being Cortifex, the mode's main antagonist. Cortifex not only, as I said, looks fucking awesome, but he takes lessons learned from the Forsaken and made himself a bit more of a threat to the player. Cortifex has a whirlwind-like attack that can deal damage over time if the player is inside it. I can't quite remember at the minute, but I'm pretty sure he has a beam attack or a slam attack against the player as well. Cortifex also summons reinforcements to his side, and the player must use the shield to block Cortifex's blast attack, then shoot him in his exposed weakened eye to defeat him. Honestly, for what Vanguard was, the Cortifex fight is pretty solid. Next up, we have the game's 2 elite/special enemies. I'm not sure what they're considered by the game, or like if the Zabala is elite and the Stormkrieger is a special, I'm not sure, but Zabala is the more interesting of the two. A dark mage assassin shadow creature from the Dark Aether continues Peak Guard's phenomenal art design with one of the coolest looking enemies we have ever seen in Zombies. Zabala is a mostly ranged attacker, spawning in electric orbs around the player every time she teleports. When she respawns into the material plane, the player now has the chance to destroy one of her 3 face masks that, once destroyed, takes a third of her health away. I actually love everything about Zabala and wish they kept, if they keep bringing enemies back, can we at least get Zabala back? She was a cool ass enemy. I know she was in Vanguard, but she was cool. Like, I would have preferred her to like a Mimic. Give her another chance to shine if you're gonna bring enemies back. The Sturmkrieger is another ranged elite, but this one is much less interesting and a lot more annoying. We have a zombie with a minigun. That's really it. He's just a big bulky zombie that carries around a gigantic minigun that shreds the player's armor. Less interesting in design and worse attack patterns, kind of a nothing burger enemy here, to be completely honest. We also have the Boom Schreier, which is the Hellhound replacement. This is basically just a reskin Tormentor, nothing more to say about this one. We finally have the Syraxis Shadow boss fight, which is basically just a recolor of Zabala, but with unique mechanics and a fun gimmick with charging the relic with different types of souls that can only be used, that can only be gathered using the map's wonder weapon, and then that creates a shield bubble around the Syraxis Shadow that you can then shoot and kill. So she's basically a Zabala, but she's a cool Zabala. Honestly, for like, it's not a bad fight for using a reskinned enemy, and they managed to make it feel like a boss fight even though you're just fighting basically a buffed up special zombie. But it's a fun enough fight, actually, to be completely honest. Peak Guard had very limited but cool selections of special enemies, but unfortunately there's only so many times we can see the Stormkrieger or the Zabala until it gets boring to fight them. And with how Vanguard is set up, that happens incredibly quickly. And I'm not going to blame the enemies on that. That is definitely 100% the game's fault, because the game has minimal maps and it has minimal enemies. So of course you're going to get bored of seeing the same enemy over and over again. We have the Boom Shriers as well, which I'm pretty sure is in every map. I'm pretty sure the Boom Shriers in literally every map, and I just don't like the Boom Shriers at all. Cortifex is a genuinely good boss fight that was unfortunately stuck in a woeful zombies game, and it's a pity as well, because there's a lot of really interesting lore explored in the Dark Aether here with Vanguard, but it's unfortunate that it was a lacking game. Finally, we have made it to Black Ops 6, the last game up until this point. To be honest, I started this script before The Reckoning even came out, and now it's been like 2 weeks. Black Ops 6 has a lot of cool and unique enemies. It also has a lot of reused enemies that let the game down in the long run. A lot of these enemies will only be mentioned briefly, as they are basically the same from previous modes. With Terminus Island, we see the return of the Parasites and Manglers, which are unchanged from the previous iterations. We also have the Vermin that acts as a spider-like Hellhound replacement. These enemies can crawl on walls and leap towards you, but the only time they poses a real threat is when they catch the player off guard in large groups. The new elite enemy is the Amalgamation, which is a fucking creepy ass amalgamation of body parts. This enemy is an absolute brute and can cause trouble for you really quickly. He has large health reserves, relatively small weak spots, and some extreme damage, especially without shields. The Amalgam also supports a grapple ability which has decent range and some crazy tracking, a bite attack which does nearly one-shot potential without armor. The Amalgam is a great introduction to elites in this game. Unfortunately, as you'll see, it gets reused a fucking lot. Finally, we have the map's final boss, Patient 13, and this final boss is a massive step up compared to even the best of Cold War. Not only does it feel like the first proper 3-phase boss fight, but this boss also evolves with each phase, with new attacks and weaknesses. I believe he has a weakness at one of each stages to each of the original ammo mods, which is really cool. The first phase, he is basically just slamming his tentacles down on the ground, causing major damage. Throughout the second phase, he has a much tougher outer shell and a flame-like design on its mouth and weak spots. And for his final phase, he has a wipe attack that will deal instant kill damage. In addition to all previous attacks, he also has a tongue attack that eats the player, causing them to instantly down. A truly fantastic boss and a great introduction to the season. Moving on to Citadel, we are introduced to the Doppelgast, which is an extremely interesting enemy type. He is a mix of a few different types of enemies. He has the speed and health of a Hellhound, or like a weaker special zombie, but having the damage potential to really mess up the player in the long run. The Doppelgast has a melee attack like most zombies, but it also has a ranged attack that shoots out these darts, which slow the player down to a crawl and stun them for a few seconds, and this is where the Doppelgast can really get the upper hand. A fun enemy, but again, does go on to be a bit overused, and that ruins it somewhat. Next up we have the Guardian, which is the main boss of the map Citadel de Morts. The Guardian may be less complex in terms of attacks and phases when compared to Patient 13, but he makes up for impure aggressiveness. The Guardian can jump around the map, causing major damage. He can also swing his giant hammer in his hand, which causes major damage. Each phase we go through, the area shrinks, using lava to cause the player to be right up against the Guardian in that final phase. Like, I mean, he will not leave you alone. He's a great boss, but unfortunately he has been power crept as the game continued to get new content. For example, Double Tap makes this boss kind of irrelevant. Next up we have the Shock Mimic, which is introduced in the Tomb. This is nearly identical to the original Mimic, but with a few small differences. The Shock Mimic can disable tactical grenades that are thrown at them, and can also cause this weird shock and static effect all over your screen. That's it, that's the changes. The Sentinel artifact is a really interesting case because it's not really an enemy in itself, but is a really cool boss fight. The artifact basically shoots out these energy beams at you that destroy your shield in one hit and then kills you in another. It's a very lethal attack, but it's so obvious and telegraphed that it's nearly impossible to get hit by. The second phase has you fighting the map's special enemies, but with the artifact above them, causing the same damage as the beam. This is particularly worse when you are fighting the Doppelgast, as his speed allows him to reach you and kill you in seconds. The final phase is just a damage check, but honestly it's a good fight, just not a great enemy per se. Next up we have the Toxic Zombie, which is essentially tormentors, but I actually prefer these ones both aesthetically and how they work as enemies. Instead of exploding when they reach you, they will hit you, causing minuscule damage, but if you shoot them while they are next to you, they will blow up, causing massive damage to you and nearby enemies. A great enemy that requires you to pay attention as you go. Next up we have the Elder Disciple, and these enemies are basically just disciples that can spawn in and rapidly evolve other enemies. This is an interesting evolution of the Disciple enemy, and probably probably the only returning enemy that I prefer here than in the original. Not much to say about him, but it's a great, fantastic update to an old enemy. Then we have the Z-Rex, which is a fantastic final boss to the map Shattered Veil. While this may be lacking in unique attacks, it makes up for it in difficulty and presentation. The Z-Rex is a massive step up in terms of difficulty over the previous 4 maps. The boss is fast, aggressive, and hits really fucking hard. Then we have the hard mode available around 100 plus, causing him to automatically be in his final phase, which is his most aggressive and damaging phase. Also, come on, it's a fucking zombie T-Rex. How cool is that shit? He has a rush, bite, and leap attack, all doing various damage numbers. Okay, here we are. We're at the final map. I'm exhausted, drained, and it's just been a long ass video. If you're still here, one last reminder to leave a like and subscribe. Also, to let me know what your favorite special enemy is in Zombies history. Again, I want to know how far people made it. Okay, so first things first, we have the Mecha Klaus Hellhound hybrids. I think they're called like Commando Klauses or something. These again are rush enemies that will fly towards the player before exploding. This is nothing more than a reskin, but at least it's a cool reskin. Then we have the Uber Klaus. This is one of the best elites they've made in a while. It's a fantastic enemy who has his shoulders as his main weak spot. These must be destroyed or you will be doing minimal damage to the core of the mech. He has a flying punch fist similar to that of the Panzer, a punch which will really hurt up close, but his main damage dealing is his electro ball attack, where he will throw out electricity with crazy tracking at the player. These electro attacks do so much damage that the player could be killed in just a few seconds. Once you defeat him, the Uber Klaus core will eject and you must kill the core to finally defeat him. A fantastic enemy. The 2 final bosses of this map are probably the best in the game in terms of challenge, with Richthofen being more difficult. I have not actually beaten him yet, but I have reached his final phase. The first phase of Richthofen is just fighting a much larger and harder mech Klaus. The final phase is where he ejects and starts flying around in the jetpack and one-shotting you with the Wunderwaffe. My main issue with this fight is that he has way less unique attack types when you compare him to Sam. Sam has some great attacks, including Energy Blast, a flinger attack that covers the arena, and Electro Balls, and finally the giant red beam of death. All of these attacks are telegraphed easily to identify based on sound and visual cues. The attacks deal damage, but they won't one-shot you or feel unfair. If you fail Sam, it is often because you caused a mistake, you messed up somewhere, whereas with Richthofen it feels like the fight is just unfair. Sam is a fantastic final boss, which is unfortunate because I love her and would never willingly kill her. Richthofen is not my favourite, but it's a cool addition. Okay, so Black Ops 6 had a lot of reused enemies. Some are massively improved, like the Disciple, but then we have the Mangler, which is just identical. The game has a bit of a letdown for the first 4 maps in special and elite enemy categories. The game's map boss fights have all been fantastic though, and some of my favourites in Zombies history. A very mixed bag, but with some potential for the future with Shattered Veil and The Reckoning. Let's just hope each map has a unique enemy in the future. Okay, so that was every single boss, special zombie, and the evolution of them from World at War to Black Ops 6. This was a monster video, and I really hope you all enjoyed. I have to stop typing this script now, so the conclusion is going to be very short, as my hands just don't feel right typing at the minute. I don't know what's wrong. The keyboard just feels alien. If you've watched all the way, subscribe to the channel for more. Next up will be the evolution of Easter eggs, so if you want to see that, throw on the bell, and I will see you in the next one.